After the remnants of Hurricane Ida hit New York City last month and caused massive flooding, a video showing a delivery biker trudging through nearly waist-deep floods in Brooklyn went viral. It also raised questions about the everyday reality for the city's 65,000-strong gig food delivery workforce.
A new piece explores the network of gig delivery bikers in New York City intent on improving their own working conditions without the assistance of their contractors or the government. What started out as a Facebook group called El Diario de los Delivery Boys en la Gran Manzana, or the Delivery Boys in the Big Apple Daily, has grown to a system of bike security, repair networks, shelters, and charging stations for workers who deliver for companies like Uber, Grubhub, Seamless, and DoorDash. Joe Dzieza, investigations editor at The Verge, joins us now to expand on his reporting. Josh, welcome, and my apologies for my botched Spanish there. Fascinating reporting. Tell us more about what you found.
Yeah, so I wrote about how delivery work has changed over the last 5 years or so in New York, and then especially since the pandemic. And what we've seen is the way these apps work is they externalize everything onto the workers: the cost of their bikes, their healthcare, workers' compensation, all of these things they don't have as contractors. And so they've been forced to develop their own infrastructure, repair networks for fixing their expensive electric bikes, garages to store them in, to work as break rooms since they no longer have restaurants to work in. And as the thefts increased, they started to mobilize into self-defense networks to recapture stolen bikes, to come to each other's assistance when they're attacked, to cross dangerous areas like a bridge that they frequently have to commute home over to the Bronx, and things like that.
And Josh, did we ever find out who that worker was and who he was delivering on behalf of?
I believe he was found through one of the sort of more formal activist organizations. Los Deliveristas located him. I don't recall who he was delivering for. It was one of the apps.
It's fascinating. I mean, what could be done? Let me put it this way: to put pressure on the companies that these individuals work for to improve conditions or resources that they have available. Because my understanding is in most cases it's sort of, the gig economy where you basically apply for the job online, go through a couple of different checkpoints and are on board, but the benefits seem to be minimal other than the flexibility of the schedule. Is there any leverage these workers have to use against their employers?
Their primary leverage right now, because they're contractors and so they can't actually unionize, consists of protests, mobilizing politicians to impose regulations, increasing awareness of the difficulty of their job and the issues they're facing, and hoping that the city or state or federal government steps in to provide some of the protections that they don't have.
How big of a network is this, and kind of what role are they able to play in New York City politics at this point? Yeah, so it's really, I covered several networks, and there are a lot in the city. There's sort of a variety of grassroots networks that have sprung up. Some are more focused on self-defense and bike thefts, and then others are more focused on more traditional activism and lobbying. And so the most sort of conventional activist group is Los Deliveristas, which is part of the Workers' Justice Project, a long-time workers' organization in New York. And they've been remarkably successful. There's a suite of bills before the city council that they are expected to vote on soon that would do things like require apps to provide delivery workers with insulated bags, which they currently have to buy their own, allow workers to set maximum delivery radiuses, set minimum pay standards per delivery, things like that would significantly improve their working conditions. But while those would be big improvements, fundamentally their jobs would still be that of contractors in a very dangerous situation without a lot of the benefits employees would be entitled to. And for that, it's going to require a lot more activism on their part, a lot more attention from politicians and regulators.
Well, oh, go ahead.
Even though they're not legally allowed to form a union, is there some talk about forming one anyway? Because you have this contradiction where if you're an independent contractor, you can't organize with other employees because you're not technically an employee. But if you're an independent contractor, you can set your own rates. That's like essential to being an independent contractor. But if you're being paid the wage or the fee that is just dictated by the company, there's nothing independent about that contractual relationship. So how are these networks sorting out that question? And is unionization kind of on the table?
Yeah, they really have no control over the rates. The apps set the rates. The way the rates are set are extremely opaque, just algorithmically determined. And so the workers really have zero control, despite essentially being independent contractors. They have threatened in sort of wildcat walkout manner to quit apps if they don't change conditions, and that's resulted in some minimal concessions from certain apps. There is talk, I think, just by mobilizing this large group, which holds frequent protests that will, they'll ride down Broadway with their bikes to City Hall. They'll get a fair amount of attention. I think that has gotten the app's attention just because they realize there's a increasingly effective political movement growing. And so they've started holding talks with the workers. That hasn't yet resulted in any substantive improvements, but in theory could in the future. But these sorts of grassroots, not union, not collectively bargaining, but powerful organizations are one route. And then, of course, in theory, the regulatory environment could change. Something like the PRO Act could allow them to form unions.
Well, and I think the challenge that these workers are going to face on the horizon is that most of these jobs are meant to ultimately go to automation. So whether it's drone deliveries or automated vehicles, so these companies have built their models on the notion that they're not going to have to pay individuals to perform these tasks forever. So I do think that tends to limit the leverage. But very, very interesting reporting. I really appreciate you joining us, and we hope to have you again.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. And more rising after this.